It's been 16 years since I first pinned on the badge in Mill Creek. 16 years of service to a town that barely registers on most maps of West Virginia. A population of 853 according to the faded sign at the town limits, though I suspect we haven't broken 800 in at least a decade. I never planned to stay here this long. After the academy, I figured I would put in my time and gain some experience and then move on to a larger department where things actually happened. Where being a cop meant more than breaking up the occasional bar fight or chasing teenagers away from the abandoned mine. But something about this place gets in your blood. The mist that hangs in the valleys on cold mornings. The way the mountains seem to watch you, ancient and patient. The quiet that can feel either peaceful or suffocating. And of course, there are things that happen here. The things that don't make it into my official reports. The things that keep me awake at night, staring at the ceiling of my cabin, listening to the woods outside. The things that make me wonder if leaving would even be possible anymore. The first incident happened about 3 months after I had started. A routine call about a disturbance at one of the trailers out past the old sawmill. Domestic disputes were common enough, especially toward the end of the month when money got tight. My training officer, Sergeant Madsen, had shown me the ropes on a few of these already. "Remember, rookie," he'd say in that gravelly smoker's voice of his. "Folks around here handle their business their own way. It's been like that for generations. We're just here to make sure that nobody gets killed." Dale was a Mill Creek lifer born and raised, a third-generation lawman. His grandfather had been sheriff back when coal was still king in these parts. He knew everybody in town, knew their parents, their grandparents, knew which families feuded and which ones intermarried so many times that their family trees didn't branch so much as circle back on themselves. The call that night came from a neighbor who had reported screaming at the Willow residence. "Ah, crap," Dale sighed when the address came through on our ancient radio. "The Willows again." "Problems?" I asked. "Yeah, Johnny Willow got a temper when he drinks. My wife's called us out a few times, but she always recants by morning. Family's been in these mountains since before the revolution. They keep to themselves mostly." We pulled up to a single wide trailer set back from the road, an old Chevy pickup on blocks in the yard. The porch light was on, but the rest of the place was dark, too dark for just after sundown. "Looks quiet now," I said. Dale was frowning, which I had already learned was unusual for him. "It's too quiet. No dog barking. They have a dog. A mean old blue tick hound. Never shuts up when strangers come around." We approached cautiously. The front door hung slightly ajar. "Police, anybody home?" Dale called out. Nothing, not even the creak of floorboards. The interior of the trailer smelled of cigarettes, a cheap beer, and something else, coppery and thick in the back of my throat. When Dale's flashlight beam swept across the living room, I saw the blood, spattered on the walls, pooled on the linoleum floor, handprints dragged along the hallway wall. But no bodies. We cleared the trailer room by room. Signs of a struggle everywhere, a broken lamp, overturned furniture, more blood in the bedroom. But no Johnny Willow, and no Mrs. Willow. And strangest of all, there were these crude stick figures made of twigs hanging from the ceiling and scattered all across the room. Dale stared at it for a long moment and then keyed his radio to call for backup. But before he could speak, we had heard it. A sound from outside that made the hair on my neck stand up. Singing. A woman's voice, soft and melodic, coming from the woods behind the trailer. Dale's face went pale. "We need to go, now." "What do you mean? We can't leave the crime scene." "This isn't a crime scene, son. This is something else. Something that we don't want any part of." The singing grew louder, and with it came the sound of footsteps in the underbrush. multiple sets circling the trailer. I drew my weapon. "Dale, what's going on?" He grabbed my arm with surprising strength for a man in his 50s. "Listen to me carefully. We're going to walk, not run back to the cruiser. We are going to drive away and we're going to forget that we ever came out here tonight." "But..." "No. Some things in these mountains you don't mess with. The Willows made their choice a long time ago." He looked at the figures again, and it seems they finally paid their debt. I wanted to argue to insist that we do our jobs, but something in Dale's eyes stopped me. Fear. Pure primal fear from a man that I had never seen flinch, not even during a standoff with a meth head waving a shotgun the week before. We left, drove back to the station in silence. Dale wrote up the report himself: domestic disturbance, no contact made, premises appeared vacant. 2 days later, Johnny Willows showed up for his shift at the lumberyard like nothing had happened. When another deputy asked him about the disturbance call, he just smiled and said that his wife had gone to stay with their sister out of town. No one ever saw Mrs. Willow again, and I never saw the Willows' blue-tick hound again either. Dale retired 8 months after that, heart problems officially, but I would catch him sometimes staring off into the mountains with a haunted look. Before he left, he pulled me aside. "Hey, you're a good cop, Jim. You're smart. But there's things about Mill Creek that you need to understand." He pressed an old notebook into my hands. My grandfather's. He kept records of incidents, things that didn't go in the official reports. Read them, learn from them, and when the time comes, add to it. I started reading the notebook that night. Page after page of bizarre occurrences dating back to the 1920s. Children vanishing near the old quarry, only to return days later speaking languages that nobody recognized. Hunters finding mutilated animals arranged in geometric patterns. Strange lights on the ridge above the mine in the weeks before the collapse that killed 27 men in 1953. And names, family names that kept appearing throughout. Willow, Simmons, Carver, Webb, Mason. The oldest families in the region, all connected to incidents that defied explanation. The final entry in Dale's grandfather's handwriting simply read, "They're coming through again. God help us all." It was dated the day before the mine collapse. Dale had continued the notebook, his neat block letters picking up where his grandfather had left off. More disappearances, more strange phenomena, and a pattern that I couldn't ignore. These incidents seemed to cluster around certain dates. Solstices, equinoxes, and one date that appeared more than any other. October 31st. Halloween was 3 weeks away when Dale had given me the notebook, and according to his notes, this Halloween would mark exactly 70 years since the mine collapse. My first few years as a Mill Creek police officer taught me the delicate balance of knowing when to look away. The Webb's still up in the North Hollow. As long as they kept their moonshine business small and didn't sell to minors, I had more important things to worry about. The monthly gatherings at Old Man Carver's farm, where cars with out-of-state plates would arrive after midnight. None of my business, as long as everybody was consenting and no one got hurt. But when 16-year-old Emily Mason went missing in my 4th year on the force, I couldn't ignore it. Even when Chief Wilson, who had replaced Dale, suggested she probably just ran off with friends to go party or something like so many local kids did. That Mason girl was trouble waiting to happen, he said, and barely looking up from his paperwork. Give it a week and she'll call her parents asking for bus fare home. But Emily wasn't like the other restless teenagers. She was the valedictorian of her class, had a full ride lined up at West Virginia. And there was the matter of the strange carvings in her bedroom windowsill. Symbols that I had seen before in Dale's notebook. I drove out to the Mason place after my shift. Her parents were hollow-eyed with worry, clutching each other on their sagging couch as I asked questions the department should have asked days ago. When exactly did you last see Emily? Mrs. Mason twisted a tissue in her hands. Tuesday evening. She said that she was going to study at the library, but when she wasn't home by 9, I called Marjorie, who works there. She said that Emily never showed up. Did she take anything with her? Clothes, toiletries, her phone? Nothing, Mr. Mason said. Her phone was still on her desk, charging. Her backpack still in her room. Has she been acting differently lately? New friends, problems at school? They exchanged a look that I couldn't quite interpret. Well, there was that boy, Mrs. Mason finally said. The one from up Simmons Way. Mr. Mason's face had darkened. No daughter of mine would get mixed up with the Simmons. Emily's been spending time with somebody from the Simmons family. I told her to stay away from that boy, Mr. Mason said. Nothing good ever came from that family. They're not right, never have been. I made a note. Do you know which Simmons specifically? Nathan, Mrs. Mason supplied. He's about Emily's age, keeps to himself at school from what I hear, but lately he's been talking to Emily between classes. The Simmons lived deep out in the forest, rarely coming to town except for supplies. I had had minimal contact with them, and just an occasional traffic stop or public intoxication call involving one of the older Simmons men. They were insular, suspicious of outsiders, and according to Dale's notebook, present at nearly every unexplained incident in Mill Creek's history. I thanked the Masons and promised that I would do everything I could to find their daughter. On the way out, I noticed a small garden stone by their front steps, a simple river rock with 3 spirals carved into it. Huh, that's new, I commented. Mrs. Mason touched her crucifix necklace. Protection, she whispered. From them. Them? The ones in the woods, she said, and then quickly closed the door. The road to the Simmons compound wasn't much more than a dirt track, winding through dense forest that seemed to grow darker with every mile. My cruiser's suspension protested as I navigated around potholes and exposed roots. I had radioed in my location before heading out, but Chief Wilson's response had been concerning. The Simmons? What are you doing way out there? Following a lead on the Mason girl. There was a long pause. Listen to me, you turn around and that's an order. We don't go into the Simmons compound uninvited. Since when do we need an invitation to investigate a missing person? Since always. Trust me on this. I had turned off my radio after that. Some things a badge I couldn't ignore, Chief's orders or not. The Simmons property announced itself with a crude wooden sign nailed to a dead oak tree. Trespassers will be shot, in faded white paint. Beyond it, a cluster of buildings came into view. A main house that had been added onto haphazardly over generations, a large barn with a sagging roof and several smaller outbuildings. No vehicles were visible. No lights on in the windows despite the approaching dusk, but smoke rose from the chimney, and I could hear the faint sound of chickens clucking somewhere nearby. Somebody was home. I parked but left the engine running. Something felt wrong about this place. The air seemed heavier, the shadows deeper. Even the birds had gone silent. As I stepped out of the cruiser, the front door of the house opened up. A man emerged, tall, gaunt, with a gray beard reaching down to the middle of his chest. He carried a shotgun casually in the crook of his arm, not quite pointed at me, but not pointed away either. You're about a mile past where you ought to be, officer, he called out. His voice was surprisingly gentle for such a forbidding figure. Looking for Nathan Simmons, I replied, keeping my hand visible and away from my holster. Need to ask him a few questions about a missing girl. The old man's expression didn't change. No Nathan here. I have reliable information that Nathan Simmons has been in contact with Emily Mason, who's been missing for 3 days now. Mason, he repeated as if testing the name. I don't know any Masons anymore. The way that he emphasized anymore sent a chill through me. Sir, I'm gonna need to speak with Nathan. Is he your son? A sound like dry leaves scraping on stone. It took me a moment to realize that the old man was laughing. Son? No, officer. Nathan would be my nephew. I suppose you'd call it. He stepped forward, and I noticed he moved with an odd, halting gait. The boy's not here, but even if he was, he wouldn't know anything about any missing girl. We keep to ourselves. Where might I find him then? The old man's eyes narrowed. You're not hearing me, officer. We Simmons handle our own affairs. Have done for 300 years in these mountains. Whatever trouble you're looking for, it isn't here. From inside the house came a noise, a thump, followed by what sounded like muffled speech. The old man didn't turn or acknowledge it, but his knuckles had whitened on the shotgun. What was that? I asked, hand moving closer to my weapon. Old house settles, especially when the weather's changing. But the day had been clear and the temperature steady. You mind if I take a look inside? Won't take but a minute. You got a warrant, officer? No, but I can get one if needed. The old man smiled, revealing teeth too perfect, too white for somebody his age living this far from dental care. And by the time you get back with a warrant, there won't be nothing here to find. Another sound from inside, louder this time. Definitely a voice, high-pitched in distress. That was enough for me. Sir, please put the weapon down and step aside. The old man didn't move. You're making a mistake, son. Walking into something that you don't understand. The only mistake would be ignoring a missing girl. Now put the gun down. For a tense moment, I thought he might raise the shotgun, but instead he carefully laid it against the porch railing and stepped back, hands raised. On your head be it, he said, but remember, you were warned. I approached cautiously, keeping my eyes on him while calling out, Police, anybody inside, make yourself known. The house's interior was dim, lit only by a few oil lamps and the dying fire in a massive stone hearth. The furnishings were little and ancient, hand-carved wooden chairs, a table worn smooth by generations of use. The walls were lined with shelves holding hundreds of glass jars filled with unidentifiable contents, roots, herbs, things that looked like preserved animal parts. Emily? I called out. Emily Mason. A muffled sound came from upstairs. I moved toward the narrow staircase, gun drawn now. Stay where I can see you, I ordered the old man, who merely shrugged and settled into a rocking chair by the fire. Oh, go on up, he said, that same eerie smile playing on his lips. See what you find. The stairs creaked ominously under my weight. At the top was a cramped hallway with 4 doors, all closed. The sound came again from the last door on the left. Emily, it's the police. Are you in there? Another muffled cry. I tried the doorknob, but it was locked. Stand back from the door, I called, and then I kicked near the lock. The wood splintered easily. The room beyond was small with a single window covered by heavy curtains. A kerosene lamp on a side table provided the only light, illuminating a scene that made my blood run cold. Emily Mason sat in the center of the floor inside a circle of what looked like salt or ash. Her wrists and ankles were bound with rough twine, a small gag tied around her mouth. But it wasn't her restraints that horrified me. It was her eyes. They were completely black, without iris or white, like pools of oil that reflected the lamplight. Next to her sat a boy about her age, thin, pale, and with long dark hair. He was drawing symbols on the wooden floor with a piece of chalk, consulting an ancient-looking book open beside him. He looked up at my entrance, and I saw that his eyes were normal, wide with surprise and fear. "Nathan Simmons," I trained my gun on him. "Don't move. What are you doing here?" "You don't understand," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm trying to help her." Emily made a strangled noise behind her gag, her head twisting at an unnatural angle to look at me. When our eyes met, a splitting headache lanced through my skull, accompanied by whispered voices speaking in no language that I had ever heard. "What have you done to her?" I demanded, fighting through the pain. "I didn't do anything," Nathan insisted. "She came to me for help. It's inside her." "Untie her now." "I can't. Not until the ritual is complete. If I break the circle now." "Now, kid," I stepped forward, keeping my weapon trained on him as I reached for Emily with my free hand. "No, don't." Nathan lunged for my arm, but it was too late. My hand broke the circle as I reached for Emily's restraints. The lamp flickered violently, the temperature in the room plummeted. Emily's back arched impossibly, her spine bending like a bow drawn too tight. And then she spoke, a voice that wasn't hers, deep and resonant, with that same strange language that I had heard in my head. Nathan scrambled back, grabbing the book. "Oh, now you've done it. It's loose." The whispers in my head grew louder. Emily's body began to twitch and contort, limbs bending at impossible angles. Her skin seemed to ripple as if something underneath it was pushing to get out. Before I could react, the old man appeared in the doorway behind me. "I told you," he said calmly. "Some things once started can't be stopped." He pushed past me, moving with surprising speed for somebody his age. From his pocket he produced a small leather pouch, from which he drew a handful of dark powder. "Hold her," he barked at Nathan, who immediately moved to grab Emily's thrashing shoulders. I should have stopped them, should have arrested them both. But the whispers inside my head had become a scream, and I found myself frozen watching as the old man began to chant while sprinkling the powder in a new circle around Emily. Her body went rigid. The black in her eyes seemed to boil and churn. And then with a sound like wet cloth tearing, something began to emerge from her mouth. A writhing, oily darkness that seemed both liquid and solid at once. I retched, the stench of rot and decay overwhelming me. The darkness continued to pour from Emily, forming a shifting pillar of shadow above her. The old man's chanting grew louder. Nathan joined in, their voices harmonizing in that strange language. The darkness swirled faster, seeming to condense. And then abruptly it collapsed inward, disappearing with a sound like distant thunder. Emily slumped to the floor, unconscious but breathing. Her eyes, when they fluttered briefly open, were normal once again, brown irises ringed with white. The old man turned to me, sweat beading on his forehead. "Now you see, officer, some things in these mountains don't fit in your reports." I holstered my weapon with shaking hands. "What was that thing?" "Old as these mountains. Hungry, patient, always looking for a way in." He nodded toward Emily. "And girl went looking where she shouldn't. Opened a door, and we were trying to close it." Will she be okay?" Nathan was checking her pulse. "She should be. We got most of it out." "Most of it?" my voice said. The old man's eyes met mine. "Once it gets a taste, it never really lets go. Part of it stays, watches, waits." He gestured toward the door. "Take her home." Tell her parents to not take their eyes off of her." The old man reached into his pocket and produced a small stone pendant on a leather cord. "And make her wear this. Never take it off." I took the pendant numbly. "Why are you helping her? Why did you?" "We Simmons have been keeping things in balance for generations. Some call us witches, others worse things. But we're more like gamekeepers. We watch the borders." "Borders to what?" He smiled that unnerving smile again. "Places you don't want to know about, officer." I carried Emily to my cruiser wrapped in a blanket Nathan had provided. She remained unconscious, occasionally murmuring in her sleep. Normal words now, English words, though they made little sense. As I prepared to leave, the old man approached my window. "You'll be seeing more now that you've touched it," he said quietly. "The darkness leaves a mark. It opens your eyes to things that most folks are lucky enough to miss." "What does that mean?" "Means that you're a part of it now. The watching, the keeping." He tapped the center of my forehead with one long bony finger. "It means these mountains have chosen you, whether you like it or not." I returned Emily to her parents that night, told them that she had been found wandering around near the old quarry, disoriented but physically unharmed. I passed on the old man's instructions, presenting Mrs. Mason with the stone pendant. Recognition flickered in her eyes. "Yeah, Simmons' work," she whispered, but hung it around her sleeping daughter's neck anyway. Emily recovered, at least outwardly. She returned to school after a week, graduated as planned, and went off to university. But occasionally I would see her in town during holidays, and there was always something in her eyes. A wariness, a knowledge that shouldn't belong to somebody so young. And she never went out into the woods again. As for me, old man Simmons had been right. I began to see things differently after that night. I noticed patterns in the random calls that came into the station. I recognized markings carved into door frames on certain houses. Understood why some families never went out after dark on certain days of the year. I started making my own entries into Dale's notebook. Began collecting my own protective charms, some purchased discreetly from the Simmons, others from the Webbs who I discovered were more than mere moonshiners. And I learned to trust my instincts when they told me that something wasn't right. Like the night I pulled over a car with Ohio plates off of US 250. The driver had seemed normal enough, clean-cut, middle-aged, a corporate type who claimed he had taken a wrong turn following his GPS. But something about his smile didn't reach his eyes. And when I shined my flashlight into the back seat, I noticed that the upholstery was all scratched up. After staring at it for a second, it almost made my vision blur, and I had to look away. "Everything all right, officer?" he asked, and for a moment I thought that I heard that same whispered language underneath his words. I directed him back to the interstate with a warning, and then followed at a distance to make sure that he actually left town. In my rearview mirror, I could have sworn the headlights of his car flared with an unnatural purple light as he crossed the county line. In my 10th year on the job, I became chief when Wilson retired. By then, I had developed a reputation in town, fair but firm, willing to look the other way on minor infractions, but zero tolerance for anything that might disrupt the delicate balance of the community. The older families respected me. The Simmons nodded when our paths would cross in town. Old Mrs. Webb would leave jars of her special preserve on my porch. It was a viscous amber liquid that burned going down, but man, I couldn't get enough of it. But even with their acceptance, there were incidents that I still couldn't prevent. Like the 3 hikers who went missing along the High Falls Trail in my 12th year as chief. Out-of-towners, graduate students from VT conducting research on the Appalachian forest ecology. Their campsite was found undisturbed, equipment still in their tents, food half prepared over a cold campfire. The only clue was a series of fresh cuts into the nearby trees, the sap still oozing when my deputies had found them. The cuts formed as symbols that I recognized from Dale's notebook, associated with a cluster of disappearances in the 1970s. We organized search parties, brought in dogs from the county seat, and even had a helicopter from the state police assist for 2 days. But there was nothing. On the 7th day of the search, I hiked alone to the ridge above the old mine. There was a clearing there that Dale's notebook had mentioned, a place where the oldest families sometimes held their gatherings. The clearing was surrounded by ancient oak trees whose branches seemed to reach toward each other like grasping hands. At its center stood a flat rock altar weathered by centuries of rain and snow. I wasn't surprised to find Nathan Simmons there, now a man in his 30s with the same lean build as his uncle. He had taken over as the family's primary contact with the outside world after the old man had passed about 5 years earlier. "Those students," I said without a preamble. "Was it necessary?" Nathan didn't insult me by pretending not to understand. "They disturbed something, broke a seal that's been holding for 100 years. They were just kids doing research. They were digging, taking core samples from the heart trees." He shook his head. "Some trees shouldn't be bled. And for that, they deserve to disappear. Oh, it wasn't punishment, Chief, it was containment." His eyes met mine, steady and unblinking. "What got into them, it was spreading. We couldn't let them leave the forest." "Are they dead then?" I finally asked. Nathan was silent for a long moment. "Well, not exactly." A chill ran through me despite the summer heat. "Well, what does that mean?" "It means that there are worse things than death, especially in the deep woods." He ran a hand over the altar's smooth surface. "Your predecessor understood that, so did his father and his before him. But I'm not like them. I don't look the other way when people disappear." "No," Nathan agreed. "You're not like them. You've been touched by the darkness, marked by it." He tapped his forehead in the same spot that his uncle had touched mine years ago. "That's why you're still here after all this time. These mountains don't let their chosen ones go easily." I wanted to argue, to deny the strange attraction that I felt to this place, but instead I asked, "Will it happen again? These containments?" "As long as outsiders come here digging into things that they don't understand, well then yes." His expression softened slightly. "But we try to warn them first. The signs on the trails, the locals telling stories about dangerous bears or unstable ground near the old mining areas. Most people do listen. And those who don't," Nathan turned away, "they become part of the balance." I left without another word, hiking back down to where I had parked my cruiser. That night, I added a new entry to Dale's notebook, documenting what little I knew about the students' fate. The official report listed them as missing, presumed dead from exposure or an animal attack. Their families held a memorial service in the town hall, attended by somber locals who murmured appropriate condolences while avoiding eye contact. And life in Mill Creek continued. And now, after 16 years of wearing the badge in this town, I find myself facing another incident. The anniversary of the mine collapsing. Yesterday, I found Nathan Simmons on my porch before dawn, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "It's happening again," he said without greeting, "but worse this time. The seals are failing faster than we can repair them." "What do you need from me?" I asked, already knowing that I wouldn't like the answer. "A binding requires blood freely given by one who walks between worlds." His eyes bored into mine. Somebody marked by the darkness but not consumed by it. I felt the scar on my palm from the night that I had broken the circle around Emily Mason all those years ago. My blood. Nathan nodded. At the altar, when the moon is at its highest. And what if I refuse? His expression remained impassive. Then pray you're among the first taken when the door is open. I've been considering his words all day as I drive the quiet streets of Mill Creek. The town feels different. Buildings that have stood for a century suddenly seem temporary, flimsy barriers against the ancient wilderness that surrounds us. The mountains loom larger and darker, as if leaning in to listen to our final conversations. At the station, I've quietly made preparations, authorized overtime for all deputies, distributed shotguns and extra ammunition, established a curfew under the pretense of safety concerns. My deputies think that I'm overreacting, but they don't see what I see, and they haven't read Dale's notebook. They haven't traced the patterns of disappearances and unexplained deaths that have punctuated Mill Creek's history every 70 years like clockwork. Tonight, I have a choice to make. Offer my blood for the binding ritual, tying myself permanently to this place and whatever lurks beyond it, or stand aside and watch as the darkness that has been seeping through for generations finally breaks free completely. Either way, I know that I'll never leave Mill Creek now. These mountains have chosen me just as they chose Dale and his father and grandfather before him. I check my watch. 6 hours until midnight. 6 hours until I meet Nathan at the altar and make my final choice. In the meantime, though, I have to make my rounds. My town to protect for as long as it remains a town and not something else entirely. The sun is setting now and the shadows are lengthening across Main Street. From somewhere deep in the surrounding forest comes a sound. It's not quite a howl, not a scream, but something in between. Something that makes the windows on the cruiser vibrate slightly. I start the engine and head toward the edge of town, toward the dark tree line that marks the beginning of the wilderness. Whatever makes its way through tonight, I'll be waiting. My radio crackles as I approach the tree line. My deputy's voice comes through, tense and staticky. Chief, we've got a situation at the Rusty Nail. Multiple calls are coming in. I key the mic. What is it? Not sure, reports of a fight, but there's some weird details. Patrons are saying that the mirrors behind the bar are showing things that aren't there. Bartender claims that the bottles are bleeding. My grip tightens on the steering wheel. The Rusty Nail sits at the intersection on Main and Old Mine Road, directly above what used to be the main shaft of the town mine, before it had collapsed, before 27 miners were entombed. On my way, tell everybody to stay inside and away from the windows. Sir. Just do it, deputy, and don't look at any mirrors. I make a U-turn, tires squealing on the cracked asphalt, and I speed in the direction of the Rusty Nail. The Rusty Nail's neon sign flickers erratically as I pull into the gravel lot. Several patrons huddle outside, their breath fogging in the unexpectedly cold air. Their eyes are wide, faces pale despite the alcohol that must be in their systems. Frank Williamson, the owner, rushes towards my cruiser. Oh, thank God you're here. Something's wrong inside, the mirrors. I know, Frank. Get these people away from here. Tell them to go home and lock their doors and stay inside. But do it now, Frank. The urgency in my voice must register because he nods and begins herding the shell-shocked patrons toward their vehicles. In hindsight, not a smart idea, but they couldn't be here right now. I grab my shotgun from the rack and I approach the entrance. Through the windows, I can see the bar is strangely dark despite the overhead lights being on still. My deputy meets me at the door, his young face tight with controlled fear. Chief, I'd tried to secure the scene, but he swallows hard. The mirrors, they're showing things. What exactly? His eyes dart away. People, but they're not right. It's like they have the wrong faces on. and there's something else moving behind them. I nod unsurprised. Dale's notebook had mentioned a similar phenomenon during previous anniversaries. Is anybody still inside? Oh, just old Pete. He was passed out in the back booth when it started. Wouldn't wake up when I tried to move him. Pete Carver, 80 years old and related to every Carver in the county. Known for his knowledge of local lore and his ability to drink anybody under the table. Not somebody that I want caught in the crossfire of whatever's happening. All right, I want you to clear the perimeter, deputy. Keep everybody back at least 100 yards. No, you're not going in alone. That's an order, deputy. Go on now. I ready my shotgun and move towards the door. The door creaks as I push it open. Inside, the temperature drops at least 20 degrees and my breath plumes visibly. Pete, I call out. Pete Carver. A muffled groan from the back booth. I can see his prone form slumped over the table. The bar area itself appears normal at first glance. Stools upturned for closing, glasses drying on racks. But the mirrors, yeah, they're definitely wrong. The massive mirror behind the bar doesn't reflect the room that I'm standing in. Instead, it shows what looks like the same space but decayed and rotting. Floorboards and walls covered in mold. And other dark figures seated at the bar where nobody sits in reality. As I watch, one figure turns slowly toward me. It wears what might have once been a miner's uniform, now tattered and stained with something dark. Its face is obscured, but I can feel it seeing me. Not tonight, I mutter. Not in my town. The figure in the mirror stands, and others turn to follow its gaze. They begin to move toward the mirror's surface from their side, hands reaching out, pressing against the glass as if testing its resistance. I hurry to Pete, keeping my eyes averted from the other decorative mirrors scattered throughout the room. Each one in my vision seems to show different scenes, none of them reflecting the actual room. Pete, come on, wake up. I shake his shoulder roughly. His head lolls and then lifts. His eyes open, but they're glazed and unfocused. Jim? His voice sounds distant, as if speaking from the bottom of a well. They're coming back up, all of them. Hey, we need to go now. I hoist him up, surprised at how light he feels for his size. Too late. Look. Despite my better judgment, I follow his gaze to the mirror above our booth. Instead of our reflections, it shows the interior of a mine shaft. Support beams buckling and dust and rock falling as men scream and scramble in the dim light of headlamps. The mine collapse, happening right now 70 years later in some adjacent reality bleeding through. A crack appears in the mirror, splitting it diagonally from corner to corner. Dark liquid begins to seep through, not water, too viscous, too red. Pete laughs, a hollow sound. The mountains are bleeding out all of its secrets. A crash from the bar makes me spin around. The large mirror is shattered, but instead of glass falling to the floor, the fragments hover in midair, rotating slowly. Beyond them, where the mirror once stood, is a yawning darkness that doesn't belong. A space that can't exist in the physical layout of the building. Figures move within that darkness, approaching the threshold. I raise my shotgun instinctively, but Pete's hand closes around my wrist with surprising strength. It won't help, he says, suddenly lucid. You can't kill what's already died once. Pete pulls from his pocket and hands me a leather pouch filled with ingredients that I do not recognize. You'll have to use this. I fling the pouch toward the opening behind the bar. The powder within hangs suspended for a moment, glittering in the dim light, and then ignites with a blinding flash. Unearthly screams echo from the darkness as the figures retreat. The mirror fragments drop to the floor, once again just broken glass. It's not gonna hold, Pete says, now standing up under his own power. Not this time. Too many seals are broken. Too much is owed. Owed by whom? His eyes fix on mine. By all of us, this town was built on bargains. Bargains with things older than the mountains themselves. The miners broke the deepest seal in '53, released something that should have stayed buried. The old families, they negotiated a delay. 70 years of peace in exchange for... He trails off. In exchange for what, Pete? Blood, service, kids sometimes. He looks away. My own grandfather was a part of it. I learned things that no man should know to help with the binding. The building groans around us, timbers creaking like we're in the hold of his ship caught in a storm. We need to go, I insist, pulling him toward the exit. Outside, the night is transformed. The sky churns with clouds that glow faintly from within, like lightning trapped in smoke. The air smells of ozone and copper. My deputy and a small crowd of townspeople stand at the perimeter that he established, watching in horrified fascination. Get them out of here, I yell at my deputy as I half-drag Pete toward my cruiser. Chief, what's happening? Before I can answer, a tremor runs through the ground, slight at first and then violent enough to stagger us. Somewhere in the distance, car alarms begin to wail. Earthquake! Somebody in the crowd yells. Pete laughs that hollow laugh again. Waking up. It's waking up. Another tremor, stronger this time. A fissure opens in the gravel parking lot, steam or smoke rising from its depths. Everybody needs to evacuate. I shout over the growing noise. Deputy, get on the radio. Tell all units to coordinate evacuation toward the county line, east side only. The west road goes too close to the old quarry. Evacuation for an earthquake. I grab his shoulder. Look at me, this isn't an earthquake. I don't have time to explain, but you need to trust me. Get these people out of here, don't stop for anything. Don't let anybody stay behind. Something in my expression must convince him, because he nods sharply and rushes to his patrol car. I help Pete into my cruiser and slide behind the wheel. As I start the engine, he grabs my arm. Where are you taking me? Out of town with the others. He shakes his head. No, take me to the altar. I'm a carver, my blood still means something on a night like this. I stare at him, realizing what he's offering. Pete, you're 80 years old. The ritual would kill you. I'm dying anyway, cancer. Doctor gave me 3 months 2 weeks ago. He meets my gaze steadily. Better go out useful than withering in some hospital bed. Another tremor rocks the cruiser. Through the windshield, I can see the bar's windows glowing with an unnatural light from within. The altar, Pete insists. We need to at least slow it down until the Simmons can complete the main binding. I put the car in drive, a decision made. I'm supposed to meet Nathan there at midnight anyway. Oh good. Pete settles back in his seat. 3 bloodlines are stronger than 2. The drive to the ridge is harrowing. Tremors continue to shake the ground at irregular intervals. Twice, fissures open in the road ahead of us, forcing detours. The forest on either side of the narrow mountain road seems to be alive. Trees swaying despite any wind, shadows moving between trunks like solid things. At one point, something massive crosses the road ahead, a dark shape larger than a bear, but it's moving all wrong, its proportions shifting as it disappears into the underbrush. I don't slow down to get a better look. We reach the clearing above the old mine just after 11. The site overlooks the sealed mine entrance where 27 men died 70 years ago tonight. Nathan's already there with the other members of the Simmons family, arranging items into a circle. An old miner's lamp, coal fragments, and what looks like pieces of timber from the original mine supports. It's happening again, Nathan says grimly as we approach. The mountain is restless. The old debt must be acknowledged. The mountain has a long memory, Pete interjects, his voice solemn. The dead want recognition, they want to be remembered. The ground trembles beneath our feet. A low groaning sound emerges from the sealed mine shaft, like metal beams bending under immense pressure. Every 70 years they try to come back, to warn us, to remind us of the price of greed, Nathan continues. He hands us each small objects, old coal miner tags, the kind used to identify workers at shift changes. The metal is cold to the touch and the names and numbers are still visible after decades. The ritual is simple, he explains. We acknowledge the dead, we honor the dead. We promise that their sacrifice won't be forgotten. And if we don't, I ask, then they'll make sure everybody remembers one way or another. They'll walk again among the living, showing their broken bodies their final moments. The town will see what the company tried to bury along with them. Another tremor shakes the mountain stronger this time. From down in town I hear distant alarms, car horns and building security systems triggered by the shaking. This is more than just restless spirits, I say, remembering the nightmarish scenes at the Rusty Nail. The mirrors, the darkness. Grief and rage have power, Nathan says simply, especially when it's been contained for 70 years. 27 men died in darkness, choking on coal dust, trapped beneath tons of rock. That kind of death, it leaves a mark. He gestures to the mining artifacts. We stand as witnesses, representatives of the town that forgot them, the families that profited from their deaths, and the law that looked the other way. The ground shudders violently. A fissure opens near the edge of the clearing, steam rising from its depths. The smell of coal dust fills the air, though the mine hasn't been operational in decades. We take our places. Nathan begins to recite the names of the fallen miners, his voice carrying in the night air. Pete joins in, knowing each name by heart. I stand silently, holding the tarnished identification tag. As the names are spoken, the tremors gradually subside. The fissure stops widening. The groaning from below grows quieter. When the final name is called, Pete steps forward and kneels, placing his hand on the ground. We remember, he says, voice cracking with emotion. We acknowledge the debt. We honor the sacrifice. Nathan and I repeat the words. Something shifts in the atmosphere, a heaviness lifting, the pressure easing. But as Pete tries to stand, he clutches his chest and collapses. Nathan and I rush to him, but I can see immediately that he's gone, his heart finally giving out at this moment of completion. He knew, Nathan says quietly. The carvers always served as the memory keepers. He told me yesterday that if his heart stopped tonight, it would be a good death. We carry Pete's body back to my cruiser with somber respect. Tomorrow, he'll be buried in the Carver family plot, another keeper of Mill Creek's painful history laid to rest. As we descend back toward town, I radio the deputy calling off the evacuation with a cover story about minor seismic activity from the old mine settling. The townspeople will accept the explanation, they always do. So will it happen again? I ask Nathan as we approach the town. Well, in another 70 years, I would say, he says. The cycle continues until the debt is fully acknowledged. What debt? The mine company's been gone for decades. He gives me a pointed look. Not that debt, the town's debt. Mill Creek was built on coal money. Everybody benefited while looking the other way on safety violations. Everybody pretended not to know what the company was doing. So we just do this every 70 years and that's it. Well, no, Nathan says, his expression grave. The ritual buys time, but the debt grows. Each time the signs come earlier, the manifestations become stronger. One day the ritual won't be enough. Well, what then? Then Mill Creek will have to face its past completely. The truth will have to be known by everyone, not just the old families who keep the secrets. I drop Nathan off at the edge of town. Before he exits the cruiser, he places a small wooden box on the dashboard. Coal dust from the original collapse, he explains. If you start seeing signs, mirrors showing the inside of the mine, dreams of being trapped underground, use this. It connects you to them, lets you hear their warnings. Their warnings? The mountain is full of more than just old ghosts, Chief. The mining company didn't just awaken the dead with their greed. They disturbed something older, something that's been sleeping in the deep veins since before the first settlers came here. I watch him disappear into the darkness, his words settling uneasily in my mind. The old mine has always been more than just a tragic accident in the town's history. It's been a presence looming over Mill Creek. I drive back to the station, turning the miner's identification tag over in my fingers. James Carver, number 17. Pete's grandfather, I realize. One of the 27. The notebook waits in my desk drawer. I pull it out, flipping to Dale's entries about the mine. The company dug too deep. Found a seam that should have been left untouched. Black coal that wasn't coal at all. I had my own entry documenting tonight's events. As I write, I catch movement in the corner of my eye. A dark silhouette of a man wearing a miner's helmet. When I turn, there's nothing there, but the smell of coal dust lingers. Just a reminder, the ghosts are quieted but not at peace. Not yet. I grab my pen and continue writing. 70 years since the mine collapse, the anniversary ritual was performed, though not without a cost. Tomorrow I'll be training my deputy more intensely. In time, perhaps he'll be ready to understand what being a cop in Mill Creek really means. That we're not just keeping the peace among the living. After all, in this small town, strange things will keep on happening. They always have and they always will.